So markets and prices. So competitive market means there's many buyers and sellers, so no one can influence prices. And the relative price of a good is its opportunity cost. So it's the other goods that must be forgotten to buy it. So we have to give up, we always have to give up something to get something else. So going to school right now, we're giving up working, right? So going to school, you're going to school, so you're giving up working for, let's say, $25 an hour. So that's the cost. Every hour you spend in school, you're foregoing making, let's say, $25 an hour or whatever wage rate you'll make. So quantity demanded of a good is the amount that consumers plan to buy during a given time period at a particular price. So law of demand states, other things remaining the same, the higher the price of the good, the smaller this quantity demanded. It makes sense because when something gets more expensive, you're probably going to buy less of it. So when the price of a good goes up, people buy less of it, and they find substitutes. So that's the substitution effect. So as the price goes up of a product, people will shift to the substitute. So let's say the price of Pepsi goes up, people will shift to Coca-Cola. And because the price of Coca-Cola will be cheaper in comparison, all else constant. So if nothing else changes. So income effect. So with the increase in relative price of a good and people not having their incomes increase, people have less money to spend on all goods. So this is demand curve. So as price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. So the demand curve shows the inverse relationship between quantity demanded and price. So as price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. And as price goes down, quantity demanded goes up. So the demand curve shows marginal benefit. So a change in price causes movement along the demand curve. So if the price changes, the demand curve, it's a movement along the demand curve. But a shift is caused by different factors. So shifts are never caused by the price of the product changing. So if the price of the product changes, it never causes a shift. So that's something that you got to remember. If the price of a product changes, there's no shift ever. So like if the price of Pepsi changes, the demand for Pepsi will not shift. But the caveat is, if the price of a related good, like if the price of Coca-Cola increases, the demand for Pepsi can change. The demand for Pepsi can shift. So it could be a related good. So that's something that we got to really factor in. And then expected future prices can be factored in too. So let's say the expected future price of Coca-Cola. So let's say the price of Coca-Cola goes up, demand for Pepsi will shift right. Also, the expected price of Coca-Cola is expected. So the price of Coca-Cola is expected to increase. Pepsi demand will shift right because people will shift to the cheaper option. And then income. So if someone's income is expected to increase, they will purchase more of a product. If someone's income is expected to increase, they will purchase more of a product on credit because they know that they will have income in the future to pay it off. But this is a risky strategy because they may not get the raise potentially. So that's a big risk. And then population and preferences. So if a population is increasing, there will be more demand for necessities like food, water, and housing. And then preferences. If the population prefers Avatar 2 over other movies, they will purchase $2 billion worth of tickets for Avatar 2. So and they did almost. So like that's an example. So preferences, if they prefer like a certain movie over the others, they would purchase more for that. So those are examples here. And then change in demand. So an increase in demand would be shown here. So so any of those factors that we just talked about, that would cause an increase in demand if they can cause an increase in demand. But like I said, so this is energy bars. So an increase in the price, a decrease in the price of energy bars would not cause a shift. So always remember that. This is that's something that students always get confused with. So just always remember that a decrease in the price of energy bars is not going to shift.
So basically, if the price changes,
a change in price of a product can cause a move along the graph, but not a shift. Yeah. So like a change in the price of a product can change the quantity demanded of that product, but it would not change demand. So quantity demanded and demand are different. Quantity demanded is price related. Demand is not price related. So that's a very important caveat there for economics. So here, an increase in demand curve shifts rightward. Decrease in demand curve shifts leftward. For an increase in the price of a substitute, demand shifts rightward. Price of complement, demand shifts leftward. Expected future prices, demand shifts rightward. Income normal good, demand shifts rightward. Income inferior good, demand shifts leftward. Expected future income or credit, normal good, demand shifts rightward. Expected future income or credit, inferior good, demand shifts leftward. Population, demand shifts rightward. Preferences, demand shifts rightward. So this slide on supply and demand, this particular one, is very important in terms of what happens depending on if it's substitute, complement, etc. So the supply. Quantity supplied of a good is the amount producers plan to sell during a given time period at a particular price. So the law of supply shows that if the price goes up, there is a greater quantity supplied. So producers provide more, like producers produce more when there's a higher price because they'll make more profit. They'll make more revenue and profit. So like if they're going to get a higher price by selling, they're going to produce more. And that's what the law of supply is. So like if they're going to get a higher price by selling it, they're going to produce more. And that's why it's upward sloping. And the supply curve shows the positive relationship between quantity supplied and price, ceteris paribus. So you got to keep everything else constant for this to work. This is just if this is quantity supply goes up when price goes up, if we hold all else constant. when other things come into play, that relationship changes a bit. So like not completely. It's likely to still be a positive relationship, but it won't be as strong. It might be weaker where it's like less related, but when we hold everything else constant, it's very strong. So this is a supply curve. So as price goes up, quantity supply goes up. And then a change in supply. There's a lot of reasons for change in supply. So change in supply is caused by increase in efficiency, improvements in production technology, and increases in labor. So this would cause it. And change in supply is never due to the change in the price of the product. However, supply can increase when input prices go down, because they can produce more units with more units due to the lower cost of inputs. So that's a caveat here. If the input prices go down, they can produce more, so supply goes up. So that's an important caveat there. So here, supply change in price causes movement along the supply curve. This is change in quantity supplied. The higher the price of the good, the greater the quantity supplied. A shift in the supply curve is called change in supply. The supply curve shifts from changes in prices of factors of production, prices of related products produced, expected future prices, number of suppliers, technology, state of nature. So in this case, like I said, if the prices of factors of production go down, supply goes up, supply shifts, supply goes up. And then if the price of related goods produced goes up, supply goes up. If expected future prices go up, supply goes up. If the number of suppliers goes up, supply goes up. If technology improves on production, supply goes up. Yeah, and then so that's exactly what would happen here. So, but price changes only change quantity supplied. So like movement along the curve. So if the price goes up, the supply goes up, there is a movement up the curve. And then if the price goes down, there is a movement down the curve. Supply, increase in supply curve shifts rightward, decrease in supply curve shifts leftward. For an increase in price of factor production, supply curve shifts leftward. Price of a substitute in production, supply shifts leftward. Price of a complement in production, supply shifts rightward. Expected future prices, supply shifts leftward. Number of suppliers, supply shifts rightward. Technology, supply shifts rightward. State of nature, supply shifts rightward. Market equilibrium. So the equilibrium price where demand and supply curves intersect, where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. So above the equilibrium price, there's a surplus. Quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded, and price will fall. Below the equilibrium price, there's a shortage. Quantity demanded is greater than quantity supplied, and price will rise. So in equilibrium, nothing changes. It just stays there, basically. And then anything above, so if you are above the equilibrium price, it is a surplus. where supply is greater than demand. They cannot sell the surplus right now. That's an issue here. And then if you are below the equilibrium price, it is a shortage where supply is less than demand. They don't have enough to sell. It's sold out. People want like more of the product. So yeah, those are good. So that's what a surplus and shortage is. So in this case, the predicting changes in price and quantity for a single change either in demand or supply, ceteris paribus, when demand increases, price rises and quantity increases. Demand decreases, price falls and quantity decreases. Supply increases, price falls and quantity increases. Supply decreases, price rises and quantity decreases. So the effect of a change in demand. So if the demand for energy bars increases, it will shift right here. And then if there's a large rise in income in China that has increased the world demand for chocolate and cocoa beans, the demand of cocoa beans has increased. And then if there's an increase in the supply of energy bars, the supply curve will shift right. And then if there's a poor harvest of vanilla beans, this will decrease the supply of vanilla beans. And this will shift the supply curve left. So when there is a simultaneous change in both demand and supply, this can cause big differences in price. So if both demand and supply increase, price may rise / fall / remain constant and quantity increases. If both demand and supply decrease, price may rise / fall / remain constant and quantity decreases. If demand increases and supply decreases, price rises and quantity may rise, fall / remain constant. If demand decreases and supply increases, price falls and quantity may rise / fall / remain constant. So if there's changes in demand and supply in the same direction, like if supply increases and demand increases, this would cause, so in this case, this would cause quantity in equilibrium to increase, and price effect on price is unclear because we don't know the size of each shift. Yeah, so we don't know the size of each shift, like in this case. So this would be if demand shifts right and supply shifts right, quantity equilibrium to increase, effect on price is unclear because we don't know the size of each shift. It looks like each shift here is the same, but in reality, they are unlikely the same. So if demand shifts left and supply shifts left, quantity in equilibrium will decrease. Effect on price is unclear because we don't know the size of each shift. Like I said, the sizes of each shift are the same here, but it's unlikely that they are ever the same. Like they're usually different shifts. They're never usually the same. And then if they go in opposite directions here, so if they go in opposite directions, like if supply shifts right, demand shifts left, the price will decrease. Effect on quantity is unclear because we don't know the size of each shift in that case. And then here, supply shifts left, demand shifts right, price will increase. Effect on quantity is unclear because we don't know the size of each shift. So that's an important, like these graphs are good. Using it, like showing it graphically like this is a lot better because like visually you can see if the price actually increases or decreases, or if the quantity increases or decreases. So these graphs in this PowerPoint under supply and demand under slides in Brightspace is Fanshawe Online is a good graphical showing of what happens. So we'll do some practice on this material just to practice on the supply and demand material here. So let's try some practice. So in this case, supply and demand. So for this one, in regard to demand, a change in price causes what? Does Alexandra want to try?
Yeah, sure. It will cause a shift in quantity.
Oh, sorry, my sound was off. Sorry about that, everybody.
That's okay.
Sorry, I don't know. Sorry about that. I don't know how long it was off. I'm sorry. You want to go ahead, Alexandra?
Yeah, it will probably change the quantity of demand.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So quantity demanded would change. That's great. Yeah, I apologize, everyone. I don't know how long the sound was on mute. I apologize. If I missed anybody, I'm sorry about that. So thanks, Alexandra. It was great. So with regard to supply, a change in price causes what? Does Ashley want to try?
So when it comes to price, it just causes a movement along the curve, not a shift in where the curve is on the graph. So that would be the quantity supply, right?
Yes, exactly. Great work. That was great. Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you, Ashley. And then Didier, do you want to try what does the demand curve reveal?
So the demand curve reveals that actually I'm not sure. What is that?
That's okay. So it shows that the quantity demanded decreases when price increases. So like people have a lower, like people demand less as price increases. And it makes sense because like if the price of something goes up, then I'm gonna buy it less. Makes sense.
Yeah, I know that it happens with inflation. The prices will go up because people had a lot of money to spend. So I know I see what you mean. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you brought up a good example. Like current news, inflation was very high last year. I believe it will come down significantly this year. I believe that it will be 4% this year. I think so, based on the interest rate increases. But last year it was very high. I think the Bank of Canada is going to bring it down to 4%.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, because the problem is the high inflation is not good for the stock market. Like high
Yeah.
inflation is bad for stock prices, and investing, it's just problematic for investing purposes.
Mhm.
So once it comes down, I think the stock market is going to do better. I think this year it'll be a better stock market because inflation is not good for stock prices. Also, high interest rates are not good for stock prices either.
Yeah.
Reducing interest rates are beneficial for stock prices. So once interest rates come down, that's when stock prices will go back up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, good job, Didier. That was excellent. Great example with inflation. Hannah, do you want to try doing the next one? What does the supply curve reveal?
Well, reading what it said in the slides, it's the positive relationship between the quantity supplied and the price.
Yes, excellent.
And I think
Great
that's
job.
the price of the object that they're selling or whatever they're selling.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Thank you, Hannah. That was great. And then when the market price is above or below the equilibrium price, the market is said to be in a state of what? Does Juan want to try?
It means it's the state of shortage or surplus.
Yes, exactly. Above, surplus, below, below would be shortage. Yeah. Great job, Juan. Thank you. And then Malika, what are some events that would cause a shift right in demand for chicken?
I don't know.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
I'm having a
So-
hard time understanding the shifts, like what it means when it shifts right or left.
Okay. So what can cause the shift here is like for a shift right in demand for chicken, if a shift right in chicken can be caused by an increase in the price of chicken substitutes because people will buy less of the chicken substitute due to the more expensive price of the chicken substitute. And then they will buy more chicken. Because chicken is because chicken is less expensive in comparison to the chicken substitute now. Assuming nothing else changes. So like if it's chicken substitute, like let's say it's beef or pork, if they increase in price, people will buy less of them and then buy more chicken because because chicken would not, the price would be cheaper in comparison. So like the demands for chicken will increase due to this. So that's one of the reasons why. And then Morgan, do you want to try to is there another can you think of a reason why there would be a shift right in demand?
I think from my understanding, like a population increase would
Yeah.
influence a shift, right? So like if you
Yes.
had if the population increased, then there would be higher demand, so that would shift right.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a good one. So yeah, population increase, there is an increase in the demand for food, right? And chicken is one of the foods that people could select due to protein needs. So like that would be a type of food that they could select, and due to and based on the increase in population, selecting chicken as one of the foods that they need, the demand for chicken would increase. So yeah, great one. That was great. Great job, Morgan. And then Olivia, can you think of another reason why there would be a shift right in demand for chicken?
If the supply of chicken goes down, wouldn't the demand increase?
I would say if supply increases, then the demand increases too.
So that,
Like the quantity of it increases.
yeah, that could be a reason. Like if that's a good one. Yeah. So like if consumers
Because
expect,
if supply quantity increases, then the price decreases. Therefore, the demand will increase because the price drops and it will be cheaper than the other meat substitute.
yeah, that's a good, yeah, like that's a good scenario. If the
Actually,
supply,
I think where you were going with it is that if people are expecting there to be a shortage in the future of chicken, for example, like if there was like a bird flu or something, then people
yes,
would buy more before something like that would happen.
Like a panic
that's
buying situation.
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah, that's a good that's a good like that's yeah, that's a likely scenario. So yeah, if they expect shortage of chicken in the future due to bird flu concerns, let's say, the demand for chicken would increase now to stock up before there is a major shortage due to bird flu. So that is a likely scenario, and it's happened. This has happened a lot. Like it's happened a lot. This has happened a lot in the 2000s. So avian flu, bird flu was a big big concern in the 2000s. They thought that was going to be the next pandemic, and people stocked up on chicken when there were major concerns that the chicken supply would be in shortage. Yeah. So that the great job. That was great. That was great. Olivia and I think Alexandra and whoever else came in and participated there. That was great. That's yeah, if you go further in economics, they talk about scenarios like that more and more, but I'm going to incorporate a lot of that into this course, just to a lot of what I did in like graduate, I'll incorporate a lot of that into this course as well. So Sophia said if people prefer chicken over other protein sources preference, that's a good, yeah, exactly. So if preferences, that's great, Sophia. So preferences, if people prefer chicken over pork, beef, and other meats, let's say, / meat substitutes, the demands for meat will increase. And preferences change over time. So preferences change over time. So like people may prefer a certain type of meat over time. So like they may prefer chicken now and for a while, but then they could prefer pork next year, let's say, and demand for pork would increase.
And
when
as
they-
you come up to different holidays, like around Christmas or Thanksgiving, you're not going to buy chicken because you're buying turkeys.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point, Ashley. Yeah, the seasonal changes are really good. That's a good point. Yeah, seasonal changes affect the demand for products. So like the demand for turkey increases around the holiday season. So that's great. Yeah, great, excellent participation. That's all great stuff. Yeah. Let me know if you think of anything else for preferences, but yeah, there's this type of thinking is great in terms of if you work for a company, in terms of determining the products they should produce at a given time or the products they should promote in certain seasons, or you can use a lot of that thinking. So then 4 events that could cause a shift left in the demand for chicken are, does Zachary want to try? Do you like, what are the 4 events that could cause a shift left in demand for chicken?
Well, kind of just a lot of them are going to be the opposite of some of the ones we just listed. So one would be
Exactly, yeah.
like the decrease in price of a substitute. So then they would buy more of the substitute and less of the actual chicken.
Yeah, exactly. That's great, Zachary. Yeah, the opposite is yeah, that's great. Yeah, great recommendation there. Thanks, Zachary. And then does Alexandra want to try the next one?
Sure. So a decrease in demand can be also caused by increase of price of chicken.
Oh, can you say that again?
If the price on chicken increases, then the demand of the population will decrease on purchasing chicken.
Close. So the if the
Quantity of
price, sorry.
The quantity of demand will decrease.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, great. That was good. Yeah, good clarification there. So that's true. It wouldn't shift the curve, but that would be a move along for sure there. But that's a good one. Yeah, for if you want to move along the curve, that would be exactly what would happen. So thanks for that, Alexandra. So what would shift it though? What would shift it left?
Maybe the preferences shift, the seasonal change then, or decrease in population.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, seasonal change. If the population doesn't eat chicken around the holiday season, the demand for chicken would reduce. And then also you said the population. So if the population decreases, there will be a less of a demand for chicken. Yeah, income decrease is good too, Sophia. So yeah, income increases. If incomes decrease, people will buy less chicken. Because they have less income to spend. That's great. Thank you, everyone. And then 3 events that would cause a shift right in supply are, Ashley, what 3 events would cause a shift right in supply?
Sorry. On the slides, it says price of a complement, but what does it mean by a complement?
Okay, that's a good question. We'll go into that deeper like today. Like I'll explain it here. So complement is complement Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. So yeah, complements would be one. So if the price of a complement, like if the price of a complement decreases, the supply of the other complement increases. So the explanation of that is, so like 2 complements could be ketchup and mustard. So
Okay.
that is one example of complements. So complements are frequently purchased together
Okay.
because they are used in combination primarily.
Like hot dogs and hot dog buns.
So that's required. So if the price of one complement decreases, the demand for both complements, the demand for the other complement goes up because people will buy more of both complements because the other complement is cheaper, and people buy both complements together. And also the supply of the other complement will increase because the company will know that people will buy more of their products because the other complement is cheaper. And everyone buys both products. Usually everyone buys both products together. So like e.g. ketchup and mustard, peanut butter and jelly. Can you think of any other complements, like
Hot
things
dog
that
and
you
hot
buy
dog
together?
buns. Can you hear me at all?
Can you hear Hannah?
Hello?
I can hear you guys, but I don't think he can hear
Okay.
us.
Hey, I can
Yeah.
hear you,
I
Hannah.
can't
and
hear anything. I'm not sure why.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I'll try the
That's okay.
headphones again. Yeah, I've been having audio issues all day. I'm sorry about that.
Can you hear us now at all?
Oh, yes, I can hear you. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, can you sorry about that.
One example that I said is hot dog and hot dog buns.
That's a good example. Yeah, hot dog and hot dog buns. Perfect. Any others?
Milk and cereal, or coffee and milk.
That's a good one. Milk and cereal, coffee and milk. Yeah, those are great. Any others?
Chips and dip.
That's a good one.
I can talk about food forever.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Like tires in cars will be one. Gas in cars.
Bagels and cream cheese. I don't know.
Bagels and
We're all hungry here.
I know Olivia would like that.
Yeah, those are great examples. Yeah, like those are all complements because yeah, they're all purchased together usually. Like you can't really have, so like a big part of it is with complements. With complements, you cannot have one on its own usually. Like except certain ones. Right? So like you couldn't just buy gas. It just has no purpose. You couldn't just buy a car. Has no purpose without like they need to be together. And you can't just buy cream cheese because you're not gonna be like, like I bet I know I've just bought butter and eaten butter, but that it's rare, right? It's rare like that. But yeah, a lot of this, like you need both of them together. Like tires and cars, you can't just buy a car without tires. It wouldn't work. You can't just buy a tire without a car. You usually need them together. Yeah, sure. That's all right, Morgan. So yeah, those are yeah, good job on that, everyone. So for what else would cause a shift right in supply?
If the cost of production decreases,
Yes, that's good. The cost of production decreases. They could produce more units for the same amount of cost, right? And that would shift supply, right? That's great.
I also thought for a third one, can the supply increase if, for example, a chicken population boosts and we have a lot of chickens?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, if the supply of chickens increases, like if the population of
Like if there's more farms that are made to like make
All the
chickens or produce chickens.
Yeah, more chickens. I just don't know if that would be reasonable to say.
well,
Well, not just chickens, like if you just have more material in general, then you would have more product.
yeah, those are all great reasons. Yeah, those are all valid reasons.
Yeah.
If like the more supply, like if there's more population of chickens through more farms, like if they have more farms, more population of chickens, more material, there will be more supply. So they can do this through GMOs, like and selective breeding. So they've done that through the Ministry of Agriculture. So the Ministry of Agriculture does this. Like I actually work with a guy who he coordinated a lot of his programs with the Ministry of Agriculture, and they do this, and this actually increases supply. So so like these methods, they increase supply, and yeah, so anything increasing the population, increasing the amount of farms, increasing supply, that would allow for increased supply. So yeah, so those are all reasons why. And the Ministry of Agriculture is addressing, like doing all that kind of stuff constantly. So there's a lot of need for like that skill set, like at the Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Agriculture. They're looking for how to increase supply all the time of farm products. So what three events would cause a shift left in supply?
If there are less people working in the production process.
Yeah, that's great. So labor, yeah, that's great.
Also, if the birds get the flu, and that decreases the amount of birds available on the market.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Or even like the price of feeding the birds, like I don't know, whatever they eat. I think that would affect the production too.
Yep.
Not just for like the birds, like what if you're using like specific machines and it's in order to maintain them, it ends up costing you more, then your supply would cost more and to make so that now you'd have less supply.
Yeah,
Somewhere
exactly.
when-
Yeah, that's those are good reasons. Yeah, that's great job, great reasons. And then yes or no. So does a change in the quantity demanded cause a change in price?
As a change.
Yes,
Yes,
okay.
because that
it will go
it'll
one.
decrease the price.
Yeah, very good job. And then does a shift in demand cause a shift in supply?
Also, yes.
Not necessarily, but usually they shift together.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Like if demand, yeah, like higher price is caused by a decrease in, like a higher price caused by an increase in demand. The supply may shift because they might want to produce more because they get a higher price out of it. So that's a big, so like an increase in demand leads to a higher price, supply increases to take advantage of the higher price through making more revenue. So that's what they do to increase revenue in that case. And then does a shift in demand cause a change in quantity supplied?
No, because it should be quantity demanded changes the quantity of supplied product, right?
So good choice. So here it would be, so demand, if demand shifts like this,
Mhm.
it would be a movement along the supply curve. So it would shift the quantity supplied because you're going along the supply curve. So
Mhm.
yes, because if demand shifts, supply doesn't necessarily shift, but you are moving along the supply curve. Therefore, quantity supplied is changing. Yeah, good try. So then, does a change in quantity supplied cause a change in price?
Yes.
Yeah, good job. And then, does a shift in supply cause a shift in demand?
Yes.
Oh yes, yeah, yeah, exactly. So like, if yes, if quantity supplied increases, so if supply shifts right, it is a lower price, and demand will increase in order to pay the lower price to get a cheaper product. People, yeah, like, so people prefer buying cheap products. And then does shift in supply cause a change in quantity demanded?
Also, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So like, as the supply curve shifts left and right, you're moving along the demand curve. So it would just be a change of quantity demanded. So if the supply curve shifts, the quantity demanded changes because the demand curve doesn't shift. It stays there, and there are movements along the demand curve, thereby shifting quantity demanded. And then what's the term a change in demand refer to?
The shifting of the curve left and right.
Yes. Exactly, that's great. And then what's the term a change in supply referring to?
Same thing, just with the supply curve instead of the demand curve.
Okay, so everyone moved back from break. So I just posted this PowerPoint. It's just more additional on aggregate demand and supply, along with the other one that is up there as well. So aggregate demand and supply. So aggregate is another word for total. So for macroeconomics, we're focusing on the whole economy. So that's why aggregate demand exists, because it focuses on the whole economy rather than just individual transactions. So here, aggregate demand is the total demand for all goods produced in the country. So instead of quantity being on the x-axis, it's quantity and price here. So in microeconomics, quantity being the x-axis, but the difference is between in macroeconomics, quantity being the x-axis. In microeconomics, the quantity would be on the x-axis, and in macroeconomics, the real GDP would be on the x-axis. So that's the difference there. And so as price falls, aggregate demand rises, just like in microeconomics. But we can't use the same reasoning as we do in microeconomics. So there's three reasons that cause the shape of the AD curve. So the wealth effect, when the price level falls, the real value of wealth increases. The interest rate effect, so the demand for money is lower because the general price level has decreased. So the cost of borrowing reduces. The exchange rate effect, so a lower price level makes goods more attractive to foreign buyers, increasing exports. So to calculate aggregate demands so aggregate demand is calculated as consumption plus investment plus government spending plus exports minus imports. So that's the equation for aggregate demand. The C would be consumption, and the I would be investment, G would be government spending, X would be exports, and M would be imports. So GDP, like aggregate demand, is the total demand for all products and services produced in the economy. So it should equal GDP. So in this case, AD, the aggregate demand curve, shifts because of higher rates of saving, tax levels, consumer confidence. So based on this, the if saving increases, consumption will decrease, thereby decreasing GDP. And then tax levels, if taxes increase, GDP decrease, so AD decreases. And then consumer confidence, like if consumer confidence decreases, GDP decreases. And then wealth, if wealth decreases, GDP decreases. And then here, borrowing costs. So like if borrowing costs go up, GDP decreases. Because less people borrow to invest in their companies / assets. And then if expectations about consumer spending decrease, GDP decreases. Tax incentives. If tax incentives increase, GDP increases. Because they may save on their taxes if they do certain things like research and development. Because they can claim the SR&ED credit for research and development.
But in the video, I think they said vice versa. if tax increases, then GDP will decrease first.
Yes, when so that would be for a tax increase, but here I'm talking about tax
Oh,
incentives.
tax incentives. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. It's easy to confuse that. That's okay. So it could be credits or deductions. So if the government provides more tax credits for businesses and individuals, GDP can increase potentially.
That's like there's a carbon tax rebate or something like that that we get back now, right? That would be a tax incentive.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good example. Actually, yeah. The carbon tax rebate would be a tax incentive. Yeah, exactly. So you would get money back, and that would increase GDP, likely. But there was a period that when they were decreasing taxes, the economy didn't grow, because the problem was businesses were just saving the money and not putting it to use, and that can happen. That did happen. That happened a lot around the recession after 2008 to 2015-ish. A lot of the companies just hoarded cash, and that's a big problem, because if they're not investing the cash in employees or growing their company, that's not going to benefit our economy. If they're just going to save, that won't grow our economy, and that's exactly what happened. So you want companies to invest and spend. Then need for infrastructure improvements, that would shift 80 right. So this would shift 80 right. And then demand for public services shifts 80 right. And then foreign buyers' income and wealth, if they come into the country, shift 80 right, because they'll buy Canadian goods and services. Prices in home country versus abroad. So for that, if like prices go up, like if prices go up in our home country significantly, like right now, like right now with our higher inflation, AD will shift left, because price increases are just not good for our economy. And then if our exchange rate goes up, like if our currency appreciates, we can afford more imports, which will reduce GDP, because imports are an outflow of cash from our country. So those are factors that shift AD. And then aggregate supply is the total supply of goods and services produced in the country. So with low levels of production, there's a lot of resources that are not being used. And then if there's a high level of production, we've used all of the resources. So usually the S curve is more horizontal over here. It's more horizontal, and then it gets vertical as we go, produce more. So more horizontal early, and then more vertical late. So like resources early are not used to their full capacity, and then resources late are used completely. So that's just what happens with aggregate supply here. and then there's two different curves. So we'll watch a video after this just to provide more context. But there's the long run aggregate supply, and there's a short run as well. Yeah. So in the long run, like when economics started, when economics started, they thought that the long run aggregate supply would just be vertical. But as economics grew, the Keynesian approach, they showed that the long run aggregate supply, it started off flat and then it just increased until it became vertical. So this is more, this view is a lot more accurate. The Keynesian view is a lot more of an accurate approach. Like as economics has gone over the years, is at the beginning with neoclassical economics, they thought, so like neoclassical here, they thought everything would correct itself without government support. And that is not correct. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You need some government support. And the Keynesian approach shows that the economy needs government intervention to support itself. That is correct. Like, not complete government intervention. Like, it needs to have a balance between government regulation and private enterprise. So like, there has to be a healthy balance. Without regulation, industries like medicine would not function. You need you need regulation, and you need government to support businesses during recessions. You need government to support businesses and individuals during recessions. So like, you need a balance, and Keynesian provides that balance, while neoclassical is just no government, and it's just the economy won't work without a government. So that's so our economics has grown a lot over the years, and the Keynesian approach has improved it to match what is needed. So here, right here would be full employment, where it's circled. So so this is where the unemployment rate is at the lowest. So at full employment, full employment does not mean there is zero unemployment. It just means that there is zero cyclical employment, that there is zero cyclical unemployment. So cyclical unemployment means that it is the unemployment due to a recession. So like right here in full employment, we are at the peak of the business cycle. So that's where the economy is doing its best, when we're at full employment. And then a recessionary gap. That's when the country's real GDP is lower than the real GDP at the full employment level. So here, here in a recessionary gap, we have a lot of cyclical unemployment. Low GDP, low inflation, and high unemployment. So that's usually what happens in a recessionary gap. And then in an inflationary gap, that's what happens when our demand for goods and services exceeds production. So this happens when GDP is very high and price levels are very high. And this is good for our economy. However, the problem is prices may get too high, which has happened recently. So inflation gets too high and things become way too unaffordable. So the solution to this is raising interest rates. And that is what the Bank of Canada and the US Federal Reserve did. They raised interest rates to reduce inflation because prices became too unaffordable. That's exactly what happened here. And it's likely that the inflation was caused by all of the spending due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Because the Canadian government spent upwards of $1 trillion in relief. A lot of it was needed, 100%. But the cost of that was inflation. But we did need that. We did need that spending to keep the economy from going into a deep recession.
Now, does inflation ever go down to the point where, like, will we ever see the economy at a pre-pandemic level?
Yes, good question. So I do believe that this year the inflation will get closer to where we were pre-pandemic, because that's a good question, Ashley. So like, I think that the Bank of Canada's rising of the interest rate will decrease inflation close to pre-pandemic levels. Not exactly there, but closer. So like, I anticipate 4% inflation this year.
Okay.
I do believe it'll be 4%, because the rate hikes, the interest rate hikes have been very brutal. Yeah, like they have caused significant stock market reductions. So like, usually if anyone here wants to get into stock market investing, it's I think this year it's going to be a good year, because last year, 2022, inflation was very high. We didn't see inflation that high since the early 90s. So like 30 years ago was the last time we saw inflation that high. This high inflation caused very large reductions in the stock market. Also, interest rate increases cause large reductions.
As we touch up on this topic, I also was going to ask, I thought that a government typically tries to control it by holding on to printing more or less money, depending on anticipated inflation or deflation. So why Canadian government did not reduce money printing?
Oh, so good point there. So I'll explain that connection too. So yeah, you're right about that. So increasing the interest rate is the same as reducing the money supply.
Okay.
So like both are the same thing.
Okay.
So like to increase the interest rate, they need to take money out of the economy. They need to take money out of the economy.
Yeah, I would just think that money printing should be anticipation of an event, whereas interest rate is a reaction.
Yes, exactly. That's yeah, it's a very reactionary yeah, exactly. Like if they used money printing as anticipation of recessions, they would be able to solve a lot of the issues with the reduction in economic growth.
I think it's hard though, because as we went into the pandemic, everybody stopped using cash and just general technological advancements. So it's not as much of a cash society anymore where you can just stop printing money, and that makes a big effect because everything's digital. You're attached to a card now rather than the abundance of bills that are out in circulation.
Yeah, but I think that the printing still determines the amount of money you have in your bank account digitally. So it is kind of linked.
Yes and no, because we're so digitized. So it's not that you have less bills. There's not as much visual reminder because we don't have to look at how much we're giving.
But when you say money printing, you mean in general how much money is getting to the population?
Okay.
So good point there. I'll bring up, there's been advancements in printing. I'll bring up a video on that. Like so what's happening now is, so what's happening now is that they can print, so what they can do is they can actually print. They don't have to print any actual physical money anymore. They can just put it, what the US government can do is they can say, we want to print $1 trillion, and they put that in the computer, and then it just gets injected as digital US dollars to the bank, so they don't actually print any paper. So
Okay.
that's what they do now. But yeah, good point on that. Like a lot of it is just digital. They don't actually print the paper. And that's what they were doing a lot during that's what they were doing a lot through quantitative easing. So I'm just going to show this quick here. So this will be a lot based on how they printed money during the pandemic here, from bonds from banks. So like the Bank of Canada buys bonds from BMO and provides money to them. That is how they increase the money supply. And then what the US government was doing was the US Federal Reserve in early 2020, at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, the US government issued as many bonds as they wanted to. And the central bank, the US Federal Reserve, bought all of these bonds and gave that money to the US government as loans. And they did this as much as the US government wanted them to do.
And so I have a question. And if the bank and government keeps doing this, isn't it becoming a pyramid scheme that technically is illegal?
Yes.
Okay, nice.
Yes, it's a very unsustainable system. It really is. Like the US Federal Reserve prints trillions of dollars, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars.
the US government doesn't have enough money to run because they aren't generating enough through taxes to operate at their current costs. So that's their predicament. And this was 2020, around at the start of COVID. So what happened was, like you said, you said it perfectly, the US government needed funding and they could not get it from taxpayers, which financed the government. Therefore, their only option was to issue bonds, like try to borrow from someone. And the US Federal Reserve printed trillions of dollars to buy these bonds. And that money was given to the US government technically as a loan because the Federal Reserve bought those bonds. So a bond is a loan. So like a bond is a loan. And the US government could do this with to gain limitless money. Like there is no end. There's no end.
So they essentially put themselves in a numerous amount of debt.
Yeah, and exactly.
And that's why we have the recession.
So this so here most of the debt, like this debt that the US government has, most of it is owed to the US Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
So so the US government's debtor is the US Federal Reserve. They're both technically independent of each other, but not really. They're not really. They technically are for for official reasons, but they're not really separate. They're quasi-independent, like that, just quasi-independent. So here, but the flip side of this is that high inflation resulted. So the US economy went into high inflation close to 10%. So the cost of doing this is high inflation. So like this is a huge cost.
I'm just kind of wondering, doesn't like printing trillions and trillions of dollars, doesn't it like affect the value of their dollar?
Yes. Yeah. Good question. Good question, Malika. Yes. So like high inflation will lead to currency devaluation. So the currency will be worth less. And this will cause the US to be able to have less imports because they won't be able to purchase as much from other countries. So that's a big cost because this is a big cost because US is a service economy and they rely mostly on manufacturing from other countries. The US has primarily shifted to service industries and outsourced manufacturing. so a reduced value in the US dollar will be problematic for their manufacturing needs because they afford less manufacturing. So this is like right here, this like what we were talking about here, this is like the problem with the current US economy. Like, this is the biggest problem. And yes, this is 100% the biggest problem. And like, it's great that like all of you understand this. It's a big problem that the US economy has. And yeah, this is the biggest problem they face right now economically. Yeah.
I would assume Canada is in a very similar situation.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
good point. Yeah, they're in a very similar situation, but yeah, they did very similar types of policies,
Okay.
but they have less power in terms of them being able to print money from the Bank of Canada and pay off government debt. They have less power because the reason why the US government can do that is because their currency is the most trusted in the world. The US dollar is the most trusted currency. The Canadian dollar isn't quite there, even though it's one of the most trusted. If you have a very trustworthy currency like the US dollar, you can do this type of thing. But the Canadian dollar is not as trusted, so they can't really get away with this as much. But yeah, great discussion. Yeah, this is exactly what an economics class should do, because I find that a lot of the classes I had in like university was like, theory, but this is applied economics right here. Yeah. So great job, everyone. Great input on all that. So
It's nice to be able to apply it and actually understand what's happening with the economy other than just they're raising the interest rates and it's like, great, I'm gonna have to pay more for my student debt. Like nothing I can do. Like, I don't know what's happening.
yeah, it's what we just talked about is the problem with what they're doing right now. And what they talk about on the news, but they don't really understand the repercussions. They don't really talk about like what happens. Like what we did here, that's exactly what the repercussions of all the government policies are. So great job, everyone. That was great. So here, factors that affect aggregate supply are quantity of resources. So if there's more quantity of resources, aggregate supply can increase. Productivity of resources, if they become more productive, aggregate supply will increase. If the level of tax on businesses increase, aggregate supply will decrease. And then level of government regulations on production. If there's more regulation, then the aggregate supply could potentially decrease. And then prices of imported resources, if they go up, aggregate supply can decrease. And then level of minimum wage, if that goes up, aggregate supply can decrease as well because the cost of labor is higher. So impacts of shifts. So this is a good chart here. So aggregate demand can increase if total spending increases, real GDP increases, unemployment rate decreases, and price level increases. Aggregate demand can decrease if total spending decreases, real GDP decreases, unemployment rate increases, and price level decreases. And then aggregate supply can increase if there's more incentive to produce, real GDP increases, unemployment rate decreases, and price level decreases. And then aggregate supply can decrease if there's less incentive to produce, real GDP decreases, unemployment rate increases, and price level increases. So there's a real life case study here, the 1970s oil crisis. So there was a supply shortage of oil in the 1970s. So there was a decreased supply, and this was caused by quadrupling of the price of oil to $12 a barrel. And this caused a serious supply shortage because of certain so exports were prohibited to the United States and Western Europe. So this was a problem because they relied on oil to travel, and this shortage caused a lot of issues to the economy. And then by 1983, these countries adapted through providing more efficient methods of production. And this solved a lot of the issue. So let's move on to the next part. Real GDP and how equilibrium real GDP and the price level are determined and change. And long-run aggregate supply is the relationship between quantity of real GDP supplied and price level. And long-run aggregate supply curve is vertical at potential GDP. So like when GDP gets to its potential, it'll be vertical, and then it shifts rightward when potential GDP increases due to an increase in full employment, quantity of labor, increase in capital stock, and technological advance. So here, long-run aggregate supply will be vertical, short-run aggregate supply is upward sloping, and potential GDP can shift rightward due to technological changes in the productivity of labor, and changes in anything related to technology and production. The short-run aggregate supply is the relationship between quantity of real GDP supplied and price level when the money wage rate, other research prices, and potential GDP are held constant. So short-run aggregate supply would shift left if the money wage rate increases. So this could be if minimum wage increases. So short-run aggregate supply would shift left if the minimum wage increases. So, quantity of real GDP demanded is the total amount of final goods and services produced in Canada that economic agents plan to buy. Aggregate demand is the total quantity of real GDP demanded at a given price level P. So Y equals C plus I plus G plus X minus N. So if there's a movement along left of the AD curve, there's a decrease in the quantity of real GDP demanded. A movement along right of the aggregate demand curve, there's an increase in the quantity of real GDP. So if fiscal policy cuts taxes, which increases disposable income, or increases government expenditure, aggregate demand increases. If monetary policy decreases interest rates or increases quantity of money, aggregate demand increases. If exchange rate decreases or foreign income increases, aggregate demand increases. Increase in expectations of future disposable income or future inflation or future profits increases aggregate demand. So aggregate demand will shift right if there's an increase in aggregate demand. Aggregate demand will shift left if there's a decrease in aggregate demand. So a long run is where the economy is heading. Short run is the normal state of the economy. So short run macroeconomic equilibrium, it would be right here in the middle where the curves intersect. And then you can shift right if you cut production or prices, a shift left if you increase production and prices. So an oil price rise in this case would shift short run aggregate supply left. And then economists have different views about business cycles. So classical macroeconomists believe that the economy is self-regulating and always at full employment. So while Keynesian macroeconomists believe that the government needs to intervene constantly to bring the economy to full employment. The monetarists believe that the economy is